Homelessness in America is not a distant problem. It is not something that happens only in other places to other people. It's here, right now, woven into the fabric of our cities and towns. In 2024, this crisis has reached a scale that really demands our urgent attention. We see it on the sidewalks, under bridges, in the crowded shelters that offer just a temporary reprieve from the cold. Yet for so many, it still remains a crisis unseen. A reality we, choose to look past as we go about our daily lives. The numbers tell a story of profound and growing hardship, a story of a nation where the basic human need for shelter is increasingly out of reach for hundreds of thousands of its citizens. This is not a story of personal failure, it's a story of systemic failure. The people experiencing homelessness are not a monolithic group, families with children, veterans who served our country, young people aged out of foster care, elderly individuals on fixed incomes. They are our neighbors. The forces pushing them into this state of precarity are powerful and relentless. The rent is simply too high. This is the stark reality we must confront. The numbers from 2024 are stark and unforgiving. They provide a clear, data-driven picture of the homelessness crisis deepening across the United States. According to the latest point-in-time count, more than 653,000 people were experiencing homelessness on a single night in early 2024. This is not just a number. It represents hundreds of thousands of individual lives disrupted by instability and hardship. This figure is the highest ever recorded since the government began using this methodology, signaling a profound failure in our housing and social support systems. The sheer scale forces us to reckon with the reality that current approaches aren't working. Breaking down this total reveals an even more troubling trend: the rate of unsheltered homelessness. Of the total homeless population, a staggering 40% were found living in places not meant for human habitation. This means over 261,000 people were sleeping on streets, in parks, in abandoned buildings, or in vehicles. This is a dangerous and dehumanizing existence, exposing individuals to violence, extreme weather, and severe health risks. The unsheltered rate shows shelters are overwhelmed and unable to meet demand. To put the crisis in perspective, we can look at the rate of homelessness per capita. Across the nation, roughly 20 out of every 10,000 people were experiencing homelessness. This standardized rate allows comparisons across regions and time. While it may seem like a small fraction, it translates into a significant and visible crisis in our communities. In some densely populated urban areas, the rate is much higher, straining local resources to their breaking point. Homelessness is not a fringe issue but a widespread problem affecting every corner of the country. The jump in homelessness from 2023 to 2024 is nothing short of alarming. In just 1 year, the total number surged by approximately 12%. This is the largest single-year increase on record. About 70,000 more people were without a home in 2024 than the year prior. This escalation is not a statistical anomaly. It's a direct reflection of worsening economic conditions for the country's most vulnerable households. The end of pandemic-era protections, eviction moratoriums, and expanded rental assistance created a cliff that many families were unable to avoid, and the consequences are now visible in these staggering figures. This dramatic rise was not evenly distributed. The increase was particularly pronounced among certain demographics, highlighting the deepening inequalities in our society. Families with children saw a significant uptick, a heartbreaking trend that exposes the youngest and most vulnerable to the traumas of housing instability. The data from 2024 shows that after years of slow progress in reducing family homelessness, we are now rapidly losing ground. This reversal suggests that the economic pressures of inflation and the high cost of housing are hitting families with limited incomes especially hard, forcing them out of their homes and into shelters or worse. The comparison also reveals a significant increase in first-time homelessness. A large portion of the 12% jump was comprised of individuals and families who had never experienced homelessness before. This indicates that the crisis is expanding, pulling in a new wave of people who were previously able to maintain stable housing, however tenuously. This trend is a powerful indictment of an economy that is failing to provide basic security for a growing number of its participants. For those without a permanent residence, the concept of home is replaced by a landscape of precarious and often temporary living situations. The most visible form is unsheltered homelessness. This is life on the streets, in tent encampments, in cars, or in abandoned buildings. It's a life of constant exposure to the elements, to violence, to the relentless stress of survival. People living unsheltered often lack access to basic sanitation, clean water, healthcare. Every day is a struggle to find a safe place to rest, protect one's belongings from theft, maintain a semblance of dignity in a world that often treats them as invisible or as a nuisance. Then there are the emergency shelters. For many, shelters are the first and only alternative to sleeping outside. These facilities provide a roof, a cot, often a meal. However, they are far from a panacea. Shelters are frequently overcrowded with strict rules and a lack of privacy that can be difficult to endure. Many individuals, particularly those with mental health challenges, past traumas, or partners they do not want to be separated from, may avoid the shelter system altogether. A step beyond emergency shelters is transitional housing. The primary driver behind the surge in homelessness is the profound and widening gap between incomes and housing costs. The simple, brutal fact is that rent is just too high. Across the country's cities, rural areas, the cost of a modest apartment has far outpaced the growth of wages for low-income workers. For a minimum wage worker, affording a two-bedroom apartment is impossible in any state without spending a dangerously high portion of their income on rent. This leaves millions of households severely rent-burdened. They pay more than 30% of their income on housing, many paying over 50%. This level of financial precarity means a single setback. A car repair, a sick child, a reduction in work hours can lead directly to eviction and homelessness. The shortage of affordable housing stock is a critical piece of this puzzle. New housing construction hasn't kept pace with population growth, especially at the lower end of the market. Federal investment in affordable housing has declined since its peak. The private market has little incentive to build deeply affordable units. Scarcity creates intense competition for the few affordable units, driving up prices, allowing landlords to be highly selective. Families and individuals with low incomes, with poor credit, with a prior eviction on record, are often locked out of the housing market entirely with nowhere to turn. Finally, the end of pandemic-era relief programs acted as an accelerant. While homelessness is a national crisis, it does not impact all parts of the country equally. The geographic distribution is heavily concentrated, with certain states and cities bearing a disproportionate burden. California stands out as the epicenter of the crisis. The state is home to roughly 12% of the U.S. population, but accounts for nearly 30% of its homeless population. This translates to over 180,000 people experiencing homelessness on any given night. An extreme shortage of affordable housing, sky-high rents in major metropolitan areas like Los Angeles, Bay Area housing costs, and a temperate climate that makes unsheltered living more survivable have created a crisis of staggering proportions. Following California, states like New York, Florida, Washington. In New York, the crisis looks different. A right to shelter law in New York City means most people are in the shelter system rather than on the streets. The system is strained to its absolute limit. A record number of people, including a large influx of asylum seekers, are filling shelters to capacity. In Florida, a rapidly growing population and soaring housing costs have driven a significant rise in homelessness. Families, older adults unable to keep up with rising rents. The crisis is intensely concentrated within major urban centers: Los Angeles, New York City, Seattle, Portland. In Los Angeles County, tent encampments are a fixture of the urban landscape, sprawling along sidewalks, under freeway overpasses, in public parks. These cities are economic engines of their regions, but the prosperity they generate is not shared equally. But homelessness is not exclusively urban. Rural homelessness is rising, often more hidden. To truly understand the crisis, we must look beyond the numbers and see the human faces of homelessness. Consider the story of Maria, a 45-year-old home health aide and mother of two in Phoenix. For years she kept her family housed, working long hours for low pay. She was a model tenant, never missing a rent payment. Then a new owner bought her complex and raised the rent by $400 overnight. Her salary couldn't stretch that far. She searched for weeks for an affordable, safe apartment but couldn't find one. The eviction notice came. Soon after, Maria and her children lived in her 20-year-old sedan, a surreal and terrifying reality. Then David, a 62-year-old veteran in a Seattle tent encampment. He served for a decade, but a service injury left him with chronic pain and unable to do physical work. Disability benefits once covered a small room, but rising rents priced him out. He feels shame and abandonment. He keeps his small patch of sidewalk clean and respects his neighbors in the encampment, yet every day is a grind. Finding food, staying warm, avoiding harassment. The hardest part, he says, is the invisibility. People look right through him. We also see young people. Sarah aged out of foster care in Chicago at 18. No family, few life skills, immediate vulnerability. She got a job at a fast food restaurant, but minimum wage couldn't secure an apartment. She couch surfed for months, then landed in a youth shelter surrounded by other young people trying to build a future without a stable home. These stories are not exceptional. They are representative of pathways into homelessness. They are not stories of addiction or poor choices. They are stories of economic hardship, bad luck, and a system without necessary supports. Their experiences give a name and a face to the statistics. They remind us that behind every number is a person with a story, a history, and a desire for the one thing they lack: a place to call home. Experts who study homelessness and poverty are largely in agreement. The most effective, humane, and cost-efficient solution to homelessness is to provide people with housing. This approach, known as housing first, operates on a simple but powerful principle. It prioritizes getting an individual or family into permanent, stable housing as quickly as possible, and then provides the supportive services they may need, such as mental health care, addiction treatment, employment support. This model is a radical departure from traditional approaches that often require individuals to meet certain criteria, like sobriety, before they are deemed housing ready. Housing First recognizes that it is incredibly difficult for a person to address other challenges in their life without a stable foundation. Economists and housing policy analysts also emphasize the urgent need to address the root cause of the crisis: the severe shortage of affordable housing. This requires a massive, multi-pronged effort. It means significant public investment in the construction and preservation of housing units that are affordable to the lowest-income households. This can be achieved through programs like the National Housing Trust Fund and by expanding housing voucher programs so that they are available to every eligible family. Experts also call for zoning reforms at the local level to eliminate exclusionary policies that restrict the construction of denser, more affordable housing types like duplexes and small apartment buildings. From a social policy perspective, experts stress the importance of strengthening our social safety net to prevent homelessness before it starts. This includes implementing robust eviction prevention programs that provide emergency rental assistance and legal aid to tenants facing eviction. It also means increasing the minimum wage to a living wage that allows full-time workers to afford basic necessities, including housing. Furthermore, strengthening support systems for individuals exiting institutions like foster care or prison is critical. Providing transitional housing, job training, and dedicated case management for these high-risk populations can sever the pipeline that so often leads directly to the streets. Finally, there is a growing consensus that we must address the deep income inequality that underpins the entire crisis. The experts agree that there is no single magic bullet. The solution requires a comprehensive approach that provides housing, prevents evictions, and tackles the fundamental economic inequalities that leave so many Americans vulnerable.